Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Vinita, and this is Women of Now podcast, an initiative by Monster aimed at promoting gender diversity in the workplace. Chetna is the Chief Financial Officer for the Villa of Hope, an organization that partners with individuals, families, and communities to rebuild relationships, recover potential, and renew hope for the future. And a very special thing about this, and I'm super honored to be also sharing with you, is that she sits on an all-women board. Most recently, she also served as the Senior Vice President of Finance and Compliance for Grippa Cognizite for 13 years. Chetna has over 25 years of experience in the fields of finance, accounting, human resources, and compliance across different countries and industries, including manufacturing, trading, power plants, insurance, and healthcare. Chetna is very passionate about community service. She's currently the president of Hindu Temple of Rochester, treasurer, board member of the Mental Health Association of Rochester, finance committee member of the United Way, board member and past chair of development of Indian American leaders. She's also served as the chair of Professional Forum of Indian Community Center of Rochester. Chetna was a recipient of PTSA Lifetime Membership Award in 2015 and an honoree of Rochester Business Journal Women of Excellence Awards in 2019. Welcome to the show, Chetna. It's an honor. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Let's begin with your journey in the financial services. And how open was the industry back then for women?
Yeah, so the time when I started, which was back in the late 1980s, the career for women was mostly in the field where they could be flexible with their home life and take care of their families and children. So mostly people would go into being a teacher or a doctor, medical field. So not many women would be going into a financial sector because, of course, what you mentioned was true, because I think about 20 to 25% of women were in the financial sector. Mm-hmm. And also with the the perception of women being good at what they do at home versus in the corporate world. Mm-hmm. And in the boardrooms, you don't see women out there, and you don't see that women could be taken seriously. Mm-hmm. So that's why when I think only very less than 20% of chartered accountants were female. And so I wanted to make that change. And I said, I want to do something different with me being a woman in my career.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us, Chetna. I'm really curious to know from you, how did you set yourself for a career in finance? Like you mentioned earlier, not a lot of women fancy to be in this profession. And also lack of role models would only make it less enticing. So how did you prepare yourself for that huge challenge ahead of you? And also, what is that one thing that kept you going?
Okay. So a few questions. I think what you're saying that how did I gear myself up to a finance position? So a little bit background to that. It was not just like, it could have been any other profession. It could have been engineering. It could have been something other challenging there, because I wanted to do something challenging. Mm-hmm. But the groundwork or the foundation was set in the family itself. Mm-hmm. So my father was a big proponent of independent women. Mm-hmm. He wanted, I have two siblings, so two the girls and one boy. And my father was all about making his daughters absolutely independent, have their own financial independence and a career that they could pursue. So that's where it all started. And with his grooming, and at the time when we were going through the education system in India, I was lucky to be part of the school, Manavstali school, where we had choices of streams that we could take. Art, commerce, and science were the three streams people would generally take. Mm-hmm. When I chose commerce, I was very fortunate that one of my teachers, Mr. Sunil Arora, he was a CA, chartered accountant at the time, and he was my accounting teacher. Mm-hmm. He was pretty much my financial foundation. Mm-hmm. That the way he taught, the way could learn accounting, that has made me so strong, skill set wise, from day one to working in India, to working across the seas, and to be in the US. I think those, when you don't create that foundation at the level where you are very committed to learn what you will be using as your skill and taking it forward and improving upon it year after year, you need to learn, you need to continue your education so that you're better. That's how I geared myself to success, that I just didn't satisfy myself with that knowledge. I wanted to be in the best college. So Shriram College of Commerce was the best college that you could go to for commerce studies. And I got admitted to that. Through that, and so many renowned professors taught, I took my choice of taking those courses really seriously and being really well-rounded, groomed, to be ready to jump into the career that I wanted to choose. And at the time when there were opportunities for, say, chartered accounting, and work accounting courses, company secretary, I took all of them because I knew if I didn't have the all-rounded knowledge, I would just be siloed in one position, and I would not be seen as, I wouldn't have the flexibility to move around. So because of being a company secretary, I knew the corporate knowledge. When I started my career, I could start as a manager. I did not start as a junior accountant or an accountant. I started as a manager. I gave myself a chance of trying to be freelancing. So for a couple of years, I did work for just on my own and did services, professional services. That's where I did see a bit of a challenge there when I wanted to be on my own. To see a woman heading her own business was not taken really positively at that time. So what I was treated, so I was a very good worker. So they would take me, they would take my services, but the time when they had to compensate me would always be less than what they would have given to a person of a firm that was being run by men. So it's always that difference. And I didn't want to get into the, I want to work for money type of thing, because I wanted a good career and passion for myself. So I said, I will do something else where I can perform and I don't have to worry about, am I being compensated better than the other? So then I started, I joined the workforce. What is the ultimate goal of what do I want to do? Do I want to earn money, or do I want to provide services that are going to help someone else, or a combination? And it was always a very balanced, I'm a Virgo, pretty balanced all the time. I would think of, both sides. And I said, this is the right balance. I want to make sure I have a good career that supports me financially. At the same time, I want to do something that would help other people. So I would choose industries that would be, ultimately, I would make contributions. So I would want to see what I did impacting others. So really in brief words, I want people to stay with this, be very honest, committed, and hardworking. There is work around to hard work. You think that you can just spend 10 hours of work days to do your studies and rest of the time you can have fun? Whatever it takes, give your time, do the hard work that pays. Be honest, be committed, be passionate about what you want to do.
I absolutely love the positivity and unrelentlessness for the goal that was packed in this response. I want to build on my last question. So you emphasized on the importance of experience outside of work. Knowing you, there is no way I could keep count of the communities and initiatives that you're part of. Tell me from your experience, the opportunities and learning that you have come across, and why it is important to not restrict oneself and look for mentors, not just within the organization, but beyond the work boundaries.
Yeah, no, really, really critical questions. So I'll start with mentoring. So like I said, mentoring began at home for me with my father. And it continued with finding a life partner that was supportive of you.
Mm-hmm.
Have to start there, because it's not that I'm saying that have a career, don't have a personal life.
Mm-hmm.
Have to balance both.
Mm-hmm.
And being a woman, you know that you will have a few things that are a little lopsided that you will have to do extra in your home life versus, a man. So and I definitely have worked to changing that. So when I married Abbas, my husband is fully supportive. He did not even want to. He wanted to make sure before we got married that I will never think of quitting my career.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's exactly what I want to make sure, that we want to be life partners and not just a person who wants to marry because we need to cook at home or we need to clean at home, like that. We need to divide those work. So for women, I would say make sure you have a life partner at home that is equally responsible for all the work that has to be done in family. That's really critical, because if that's not there, we will get dragged into personal life situations, and that will affect. So mentoring starts from home. My husband always and I both talk to each other about any issues that come up at work, or something that, of course, not sharing confidential stuff, because we actually don't talk about confidential stuff that we shouldn't be sharing. But we are always supportive of each other and telling each other different ways. We read books. We figure out what situations we are facing at work that we can get out of. So that is number one. The other thing that I would advise is, like you said, don't just focus on your work. So it's not that you did your 9 to 5 job, you came home and that's it. My time is my own. Try to find things that you can do to add on to your skills. So it's constant learning. It's constant. You will be outvoted by other people who have more knowledge and also it's very hard to then be in a workforce is a variety of people. So you are dealing with the Gen Zs, and you're dealing with, all the different workforce types. So you have to be ready to talk to what a millennial will be like, what a Gen Z would be like, or, who are people who don't know the digital world. So you have to be ready to be prepared to talk to everyone so that you maintain your integrity and your skill set at work, and you know how to talk to them. So I think that's very important to keep learning, and that comes from reading, that comes from being aware as to what's going on in the world. The other thing I would say is that continuous professional development. So take some courses, take anything that's out there. If it means that you need to take it's a MBA, or if someone has not done that, think of doing something that's outside of your work, day-to-day work. And then outside networking and mentoring is extremely important. Learning from your professionals in the same field who are working in other places, to network with them is extremely important. You learn techniques, tools from them they are using in their work life. And it's really nice to share with each other or what you're using, because it's developing each other all the time. So you definitely have to be outgoing, extrovert, be working with people. So don't shy yourself that I don't want to go to this event tonight, I'm so tired. Don't shy yourself about that. Do go. One important thing that I added to my life ever since I moved to Rochester about 16 years ago was community service. It's critical to give back. Once you get to a position where you are ready to give back with your time or money to the community, I think that's very important, because you need to know you're living in a world where there are needs. There are all kinds of, you need to be very cognizant of what's around you. What does the society need? What can we do to help that? Because that gives you that additional, perception or experience that you don't get in your work life. So if you decide, be on a board of a nonprofit, get on to the committee, do some work in a different work environment, that it helps really, really well, because what it does, it takes away your mind from work. And also you learn some new skills in that other environment that you can use at your workplace.
Yeah.
And that helps quite a bit. Like I have been in situations where in a board meeting in nonprofit, I had to be in a conflict situation. I know that's not my work. I'm not reporting to anyone. I'm only a volunteer. I'm contributing. But what I learned, how I did perform there, use that technique workplace, and I have succeeded with that.
Wow. There are a lot of things that really struck with me. And if I were to point out one thing, is that reasoning of aligning with multiple generations, be it millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, the differences in culture, viewpoints, or for that matter, social, economic, and the political factors that make up these cohorts. A strong understanding of this can bring us all together and create that favorable environment, be it at the workplace or being a part of community or being part of any initiative. That was super, super insightful, Chetna. We all come across new studies, new voices echoing the very issue of pay inequality. Now, when two workers are working on the same job and getting paid differently and them not even knowing about it, will the recent conversation about having transparency in salary push more women to negotiate for a better pay, ultimately trimming down a gap, achieving pay parity?
Yeah, I think parity definitely comes from both sides. So women have to be stronger and stay their course, and men have to understand. So it comes from both sides. I think, I would say that at some point there should be some type of a regulation of, just like we have minimum wages and kinds of things. We have to make sure that there is some parity, that people can be taken to court if they're not allowing that. But I do think if more women are at the top level, if they're more at the C level, they will bring that change. They will bring that change. They will show the world. They will show the men that they are equal. And when that starts happening, there would not be any disparity in pay, because if women are at the top level alongside the men, they will not they will impact the policies of the company to make sure that this does not happen. Like there are grade levels. It should be completely independent, or there should be no discrimination against gender. There should be no discrimination against race or color or anything. So all of this, I think, belongs in kind of a similar category. There's a lot of discrimination in so many different areas, and all of that has to go away at the policy level, where the companies are making at the HR level. So I think HR professionals, and literally, I think the HR professionals have to be stronger. They have to, and I think a lot of females are going into HR sector. They've got to be really careful about this, and they've got to think about this so that they can, make those changes and impact in the organization that they work for. So it cannot be like I'm talking about regulation, a policy at the government level. That will probably not happen for a long time, and it's very difficult to enforce, even if it happens. But it has to happen at our individual level, at the level that we find more women to serve in the workforce that are more impactful, and at a level that they can make significant changes. Only then that will happen. And definitely also, it's important for women to be partnering with men, whether at work or at home, to make sure that they are both of the same mindset. And if the mindset of men changes, that will definitely help support this movement much more.
That was amazing, Chetna. Now I would like to slightly shift my focus here to the topic of educating women about financial management. I follow this organization called Elevest, and also its founder, Sally Krawcheck, and I love the work that she's been doing. I like how she places the emphasis on financial future. As an executive from this background, how do you envision empowering women with the knowledge to contemplate with the impact a break or a lesser pay is going to have on their financial health?
So I think you're saying the right things. We just have to make it a revolution. Whatever you're saying, make it a revolution. And what we can do is, more and more women-based organizations. So we should have support systems. We should have, and I know that there are organizations that we would, for female leaders or women in finance or something like that, or something. So I think the more we make that as like we come together and we make it a revolution, I think we'll have more purchasing power, borrowing, negotiating power. Wow. And negotiation, I feel, I think that's a critical skill to have. I think all women should make sure they go through some type of negotiation training. And it seems like, something I already know, I don't need to learn. That continuous coaching, development, learning how to negotiate has to be there. So you need to continue to do that to make sure that you learn your skills. How are you going to talk about you took a break for 2 years? First, I would advise that if you're taking a break, make sure that you're doing something at the same time, that you don't take a break that completely takes you off the career path. But sometimes you may have to take, not just because of family, for any other reason. Like I didn't ever take a break personally for family, for taking care of child, but I had to take a break because my husband would move from one town to the other, and I had to quit my job and follow him. And I would get behind. And that's what happened when I came to the US. I got a little behind. What I did in the meantime was I ensured, because I was in a completely different environment. And this is an example probably, you're not looking for, but I would just add, because that may relate to some other women, that if they're moving around with their husband, what are they doing? If they didn't get a job right away, participate in a course, do some learning work at the time that you keep your development, your knowledge going. So you can also say that on your resume, it's not just blank. You say from year 2000 to 2002, I was also studying, I was doing this, so that there's a continuity, there's no break for both, for showing the world that you were interested in pursuing a career, and for your own self, that you didn't lose touch with what you were doing. So I would say that there are ways to be very creative with the time that you take off. So be strong, say, we have to divide our work at home equally. So if I take a year off for my child, take the next year off yourself. I will not take the second year off. It's important. And the reason I emphasize that is, for my own child, I have only one daughter, but I gave her 100% of my time in a way that I could without staying at home. And it was really an important balance to do that while taking care of your daughter, while making sure that she's fully covered, she is fully taken care of, but did not take my eyes off my career, because I'm setting an example for her. If I did that, today, she is not wasting a minute of her time. She is continuing to study, doing her take the law degree, and she wants to be a career woman like her mom. I didn't set that example for her. I would not have raised another woman in my home to follow the same footsteps. So I think women have to be stronger. I know family is important. I know your personal life is important. Your self-care is important. It's really important. But if your career is important to you, then you have to get the right balance. And then, of course, if sometimes we also That's the other thing that, sometimes women also are working only for just filling, they're not really thinking about career.
Right.
So I think that's a different category, and that's perfectly fine, because sometimes not just women, anyone, they could be working because they want to do something else in their life. They're just filling their time with their career. And I think that, that's somewhat plays into it, but anyone who's really serious about making sure that their career has no breaks, they don't come back with a parity issue. We have to be very cautious of how we proceed with that.
All said and done, for this to reach every nook and corner of the world, a strong business leadership and vision, especially in this age of constant change that we live in, is a given. Share your definition of leadership for change, and where should one begin to have a greater impact?
So I define leadership as the ability to lead while also serving while serving your team and identifying yourself as one of your team members. So it's important that the work culture is really open.
Yes.
You have the trust of each other. There's frank communication, and it's important that there's mentoring both ways. So that's an important thing that I learned recently in one of my previous jobs. Mentoring change. It's not just mentoring top to bottom. It's the mentoring from bottom to top too. So when I was having a mentoring session with my CEO, I was the senior VP of finance. He told me that I would learn more from you, Chetna, than you learning from me, because you are living that what you're living. I don't know what you're living, and it makes sense for him to explain to me as a leader what is he living his life at that level where he's responsible to the stakeholders and governance. But I'm living a life where I have to get the work done from my team and to get to the top leadership position. So from that, I think leadership definitely is a mentoring exchange, and getting the right people and the right seat on the right bus is really critical. So it's not always like you don't give up, you keep developing your people, or you hire someone new if you don't like, you don't think that person is going to grow as much. I think it's just the right find. So you may find people on your team that are not going to grow with you or not going to go with you. Then you have to make the right decision for them, and they have to be with your decision that they need to move to something else, doing something else, because it's not going to work for them. And at the same time, like when you're hiring, you are focused on what would work with the culture of the team. How it's important, and it's important that whole personal connection with each other, because you're spending a lot of time together. So you are, more than your family or friends, probably spending time with your coworkers. So I think that all of that, if leader has to recognize that's how you bring the whole team together and make and contribute to the success of the company.
Absolutely. Tell us more about your career goals, Chetna. You're already a CFO. How does it look few years down the line? So what is that one thing that what's been your dream since you started the career in finance?
Okay, so definitely I would say that, with kind of living my father and my husband's dream when I started my career in finance, there was this, okay, when are you going to be the chief financial officer? So in my mind was always that I need to be at a place where I can make an impact, and whatever I do affects a lot of people in a positive way. So people can think that that maybe a title could be a goal of your career, or maybe a place at a place that you find, like what would give you most satisfaction. So it was a combination of both. And the reason I wanted to be at a C-level, a chief financial officer, was, all the reasons we talked about. Women not really, they don't aim to get there. They don't want to aim. They want that flexibility in life. So they don't want to give, because this is a very high demanding job. So
Right.
you pretty much are working all the time while you are doing things at home and with your personal life too.
Right.
So, but that was my career goal, because I wanted to make that difference from the get go. I wanted to be in the finance world where I could be talking to other men in the boardroom and making sure that I communicate that I'm equal, if not better than you. And that was my career goal, which I think I am there, accomplished. At this point in my career, it is all about using my position to be where I am. What can I do with that? So, of course, bringing people together, creating that awareness, making sure women understand what they should get in life and what they deserve, mentoring, encouraging people to give back. That is my career goal as of now. Now that I have accomplished what I thought of, thinking of why did I want to accomplish what I have today. And that's my career goal, that I should be able to use my life to make impact all around me, in the community, in the wider extended community, and bring people along and just tell my story so that, other women are inspired, other children are inspired to accomplish what I was able to accomplish with the different challenges, moving across, trying to fit myself in a place where I'm a person of color and
Right.
a woman, and trying to find my voice with a boardroom full of American white male dominant board. So that was my career goal, and I feel very happy that I've kind of accomplished that.
Wow, what a career goal to have, Chetna. I'm sure 90% of it was for the community and 10% of it was for you. Thank you so much, Chetna, for revealing your personal as well as your professional side of your journey. This was powerful and insightful at the same time, in ways that you are giving back to the community with your work and also with your mentorship. Thank you so much again for being a part of this show. I'm sure our listeners and I myself have a lot of takeaways from this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vanita, for taking this time.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to Women of Now. We'll be here next Tuesday with a brand new episode, another inspiring leader, and a new perspective. Subscribe now and stay updated.